Yes, June and Jennifer Gibbons are victims of Jimmy Savile. And in case you don't know who Jimmy Savile was, he was an English television personality who sexually assaulted many women and children. He'd also regularly volunteer at hospitals to find more victims. Which brings us right back to June and Jennifer Gibbons, or the Silent Twins. Jimmy was especially fond of Broadmoor Hospital, which was where June and Jennifer Gibbons were locked up for 12 years. And because of Jimmy's money and connections, he was appointed chair of Broadmoor Hospital despite lack of qualifications. Jimmy Savile was introduced to 19-year-old June and Jennifer Gibbons, and he expressed predatory behavior towards both of them. Thankfully, they had this amazing woman, Marjorie Wallace, by their side. Marjorie took note of his predatory behavior immediately, and she even reported it. He would say disgusting things like, "I'll have you first and I'll have you second." But sadly, no one cared about her report.
I did see the kids come in and off the bus a couple times.
Blake Forsman's family lives across the street and would often see their mother waiting for them or loading up a truck. I noticed the exterior of the house wasn't kept up. The garage windows were shattered and there were bikes and toys lying around. Forsman says he fixed their fence in the past so their dogs wouldn't get to his.
They look like normal kids. I mean, they, would get off the bus, run inside, ride bikes, just normal everyday kids.
A tragic event leaving the community, especially neighbors, speechless.
The pitiful part is that those kids, they had nothing to do with anything, and they're gone. They're gone. And those kids are the future of America.
So here's why people think this missing persons case and this creepy TikTok account are related. I'll be quick. Mother and daughter Katie and Ava Baldwin went missing from Texas in 2015. Viewers of the account Bebop and BB have been concerned of the welfare of the pair. There are similarities of the people in these images. Ava's father has been searching ever since she disappeared in 2015. The only trace they had was the mum's car, which was abandoned in a car park. Viewers have noticed locks, speakers and help signals during the TikTokers' videos. The unknown whereabouts of the missing persons case and the unknown emergence of these TikTokers certainly relate. But the age of the girl, Ava, would now be 13, and I'm not sure if the girl in the TikTok is too young for that age. The mum certainly looks younger in the TikTok videos, but this could be makeup and video quality. What do you think about this situation?
The world's worst job, otherwise known as Shein or Shein, however you pronounce it. Hi, my name is Ethan, and let's get right into this. Recently, I've heard a lot of rumors about how bad the Shein workers are treated each day, and honestly, nothing could have prepared me for what I learned. This all started in June of 2022 when a viral TikTok displayed articles of Shein clothing with handwritten messages stating, "Need your help." According to Brightly.eco, they state that the average Shein worker works 7 days a week in 18-hour shifts. They even found that some of the workers were seen washing their own hair while they were at work just to keep up with their personal hygiene. Not only do they work a lot, but they also make a base salary of $556 a month to make 500 articles of clothing each day. Let me know what you guys think.
I had to get myself up and out of bed for this because I'd never heard of this case before. Welcome to Creep Time on TikTok with Silas Dean. These are the 13 unaccounted minutes before Patrice Andres went missing. On April 15th of 2004, Patrice, who's a local salon owner in Georgia, walks into her shop and finishes her last client at exactly 11:37 a.m. Another client then calls the shop at 11:50, to which there's no answer, which is very unlike Patrice. In that 13-minute window, something happens in that salon where Patrice goes missing. The next client comes in to find the shop empty, and police are called to the scene, which is eerily undisturbed. Aside from some missing money in the register, there's nothing that's out of place, there's no sign of a struggle, even her lunch is still sitting there warmed up. But two separate witnesses would come forward to report passing the salon within that time frame. Both witnesses come forward to report seeing a light blue sedan parked out front and two unidentified women standing next to it. One of the women was described as tall with dark hair and the other short with light hair. These eyewitness accounts mark one of the only insights as to what happened in those 13 minutes. After 20 months of searching, her remains are finally found at the bottom of a ravine, but the manner of death is unknown. Initially, her husband is suspected to be involved as maybe a jealous spouse, but a scrutinizing investigation would rule him out. She leaves behind her 15-year-old son at the time, who till this day continues to search for answers as to what really happened to his mom on April 15th. So what are your theories as to those 13 unknown minutes?
Scary facts I bet you didn't know. In the original Little Red Riding Hood story, the wolf forced her to eat her grandma. After Katrina McGaw watched a true crime documentary about a serial killer who used his basement as a torture dungeon, she found out she was living in the same house. And her landlord was the serial killer's mother, who didn't mention the bodies that her son kept in the basement before he was arrested in 2002. In ancient times, people used cut-off human skulls as cups to drink out of. An AI robot named Sophia was declared the first robot citizen, having gained legitimate citizenship in Saudi Arabia. But when a journalist asked the robot, "Will you destroy humans? Please say no," the robot replied, "I will destroy humans." Follow for more.
A psychopath in Florida has been poisoning his neighbors by injecting toxic chemicals under their door. Yeah, and they have a baby.
When his 10-month-old baby started vomiting and he smelled chemicals around his condo, Umar Abdullah said he had to do something.
Then I actually double-checked. I started sniffing that place like a dog.
He said he changed his water heater, called the fire department, still nothing. Then he said he thought about his downstairs neighbor, Zhuming Li, who kept complaining about noises from upstairs. He installed a hidden camera, and lo and behold, he caught Li, appearing to fill a syringe with liquid and injecting it under his door.
The first thing that came to my mind, my daughter and my wife, they need to be safe.
Li was arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including possession of a controlled substance and burglary.
Even during war, the worst enemies do not attack the opponent, the other party, with chemical.
Hillsborough County's arrest record lists Li as a student at USF. The school told 8 on Your Side he was a chemistry PhD student, but is no longer enrolled there. In a statement to 8 on Your Side, Li's attorney said that Li pled not guilty and all the facts will come out in due course of time.
This is the perfect example for a life sentence. That guy can never be let loose on society. Sick, twisted, and he's in Florida. Shabadoo Bushkis, Shabadoo.
Did you know that Texas's oldest unsolved mass murder is of a Latino family, and at least 20 investigators have never been able to crack the cold case? On April 16th, 1968, the Arellano family of 6 traveled from Mexico to San Angelo, Texas to visit family. Juan Manuel, who was 29 and the father, his 24-year-old wife Monica, his 21-year-old sister Rosa, and his 3 children with Monica, Eduardo 1, Leticia 2, and Juan Manuel Jr. 5 were all traveling together. At one point, their 1958 Buick broke down while on their journey on a remote highway with a flat tire. They didn't have a spare, but somebody stopped that helped the family and took them to Sonora, Texas to fix the flat tire. Sometime after that, the individual took them back to where the vehicle was stranded, and 5 of the family members were murdered in rural Edwards County, Texas. The next day, a ranch hand discovered the bodies near Highway 277 and scattered. Their bodies had been shot, stabbed, and beaten, and Rosa had been sexually assaulted. In the tall grass hiding was the sole survivor, Manuel Jr. His sister Leticia died in the hospital 2 days later, and he had to have multiple surgeries and was taken to Mexico to live with family. 2 weeks after the murders, police were finally able to interview little Manuel, and he told authorities that a big cowboy who was a white man had helped and killed his father. A driver passing by also said that he saw a cowboy with the family. A person of interest then became a white male over 6 feet tall, between the ages of 30 to 35, weighing about 200 pounds, with sandy hair, light eyebrows, and a rash on his neck. He wore a straw hat with boots that had an eagle on the side and pants that were tucked in them, and he had a large hunting knife on his belt. The trip to San Angelo, Texas was never meant to be difficult for the Arellano family. The father, Juan Manuel, knew English and had been to the United States before. In fact, his license plates were from Texas, and he had been a migrant farm worker in the state of Iowa. Over the years, there were many leads that were followed and had no success. The gun that was used has never been
been found, and it is possible that the individual who committed these murders may have already passed away.
Tiptoe by the window, that is where I'll become tiptoe.
So was JonBenet's older brother Burke Ramsey involved in her death? Burke was known by many people as being a really good kid, not having a bad temper. He was just a normal 9-year-old kid. The morning that JonBenet went missing, he was actually taken to a family friend's house pretty early that day before JonBenet was ever found. Investigators that talked to him that day said that they did not think that he knew his sister was dead, and he was pretty calm because he had no clue the seriousness of the situation. A lot of people also point to the pineapple. Pineapple was found in JonBenet's stomach that proved that she would have eaten it that night after they got home from the Christmas party. Burke's fingerprints were found inside of the bowl of pineapple, so a lot of people speculate that maybe JonBenet took some of Burke's pineapple, he got angry, pushed her, and she accidentally passed away. But there's no way to prove that that pineapple was taken out that evening or that Burke was eating it that evening. Burke and Patsy don't remember anyone eating the pineapple, so what's more likely is it was out from an earlier meal and JonBenet grabbed a piece when she got home. To this day, Burke maintains his innocence, and like I said, at first I was thinking that he was involved and that his mother covered it up to protect her only remaining child, but after doing a ton of research, I just don't think that's true. I'm not 100% convinced on who I think killed JonBenet, and this is just my opinion, but I personally believe that Patsy had something to do with the cover-up. And honestly, I'm not really convinced that John Ramsey even knew anything about it, because he pretty much went straight to JonBenet's body when he was asked to search the house, and he was smart enough, in my opinion, if he knew that it was there, I don't think he would have gone there first. Fibers from the jacket that Patsy Ramsey was wearing that evening were found in the duct tape, the nylon rope, and on the basement floor. It could be argued that this was in her house and all those items came from her house, so the fibers could match, but I find it too much of a coincidence that fibers from the exact jacket she was wearing that night matched multiple pieces of key evidence. Unfortunately, Patsy passed away from cancer in 2006, so we may never have answers. John Ramsey maintains him and his family's innocence as well and has spoken about the case for years, and a lot of people believe that he truly wasn't involved. There are a lot of other outside suspects, including the family's former housekeeper and some other men who were found to have obsessions with JonBenet. This man even falsely confessed to JonBenet's murder, but it was proven that he didn't do it. All of the main suspects that have been investigated that are outside of the family have never been linked by DNA evidence to JonBenet. 25 years later, detectives are still hopeful that new DNA technology will lead to JonBenet's killer.
This is the most horrific and unsettling case I've ever covered. This is the case of Jennifer Doherty and the Greensburg Six. This case takes place in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, which is a smaller city of about 15,000 people that was generally considered safe. 30-year-old Jennifer lived about 10 miles away in Mount Pleasant. Jennifer was sweet-natured and kind, she loved to dance, and she was very trusting with everyone who she encountered. A big part of Jennifer being able to trust so easily and not pick up on social cues is because she had some mental disabilities. These disabilities prevented Jennifer from being able to keep up with her peers in school, at least in the academic sense. So although Jennifer had a good life at home with her family, when she went to school she was bullied quite heavily. Kids would do things like push her and put gum in her hair. Despite the ridicule, Jennifer consistently chose kindness and compassion. And with the love and support from her family, Jennifer did become quite independent. For instance, she would take the bus all by herself from Mount Pleasant to Greensburg. In Greensburg, she would attend various appointments like dentist appointments and even go to the community center. And it was at that community center that Jennifer finally thought that she made friends. These supposed friends were Peggy, Angela, Amber, Robert, Ricky, and Melvin. And you will soon see why the word friends is in heavy quotations. Now all of these friends lived together in Greensburg. Angela, over here to the right, was the youngest at just 17 years old, and her boyfriend up here, Ricky, he was 23. Then there was 20-year-old Amber, who was pregnant with Melvin Knight's baby. Melvin was also the same age as Amber, so he was 20. Peggy down here was 27, and Robert up there was 36. Now, although Jennifer was technically 30, keep in mind that she had the mental capabilities of a 12 to 14-year-old. Now, the 6 of them and Jennifer hung out for quite some time, but 17-year-old Angela soon became very jealous of Jennifer. And her jealousy really had nothing to do with Jennifer, but it had everything to do with her boyfriend Ricky. Whenever they all hung out together, Ricky would apparently flirt with Jennifer, and Angela apparently even heard Ricky on the phone with Jennifer proclaiming his love for her. So Angela confided in Amber, and they came up with this whole effed up plan that included all of the rest of the housemates. On February 10th of 2010, Jennifer was invited to a sleepover with her friends. Before leaving, Jennifer left a note for her mom that says, "I hope you have a great day at work and I love you very much."
This WWE wrestler murdered his wife and child before taking his life with an exercise machine. This is Chris Benoit. He was known as the Canadian Crippler and the Rabid Wolverine. And throughout his career in wrestling, he held 30 championship titles. He was one of the most well-respected people in the WWE, and so many people across the planet knew who he was at the time of his death. So these are Nancy and Daniel, Chris's wife and child. At around 3:30 p.m. on June 23, 2007, one of Chris's friends received a voicemail from Chris. In this voicemail, Chris told his friend that he wouldn't be appearing at the event that evening and that his wife and son had food poisoning and were feeling ill. When Chris's friend called him back, Chris sounded tired and groggy, and he basically repeated what he had said on the voicemail. By the way, Chris's friend that he was talking to was fellow wrestler Chavo Guerrero. So over the next 24 hours, Chris was still really hard to reach. Friends and family members of his were trying to get in contact with him and he wasn't responding. And he was supposed to be in Houston, Texas for a massive wrestling event that Sunday evening. So early on Sunday morning, the day of the wrestling event, a number of texts were sent from Chris and his wife's phones. 4 of the texts just contained his home address, and the other text stated that the dogs were in a safe area and that a side door of the house had been open. Now, Chris was supposed to be landing in Houston, Texas for that event that evening at around 8 a.m. that day. But when his friend went to go pick him up, Chris was nowhere to be found. Later that morning, Chris actually called the WWE's Talent Relations office and stated that his wife was at the hospital with him because their son was vomiting. He then stated that he'd be catching a later flight and he would still make it to the show in Houston that evening, but that never happened. And that would be because at the end of that day, Chris, his wife, and his son would all be dead. And Chris's wife Nancy and his son Daniel were already dead at the time that he was texting and calling his friends. So now let's go back a few days to Friday, June 22nd, 2007. So on that day, Chris snapped. He bound his wife Nancy's feet together with duct tape, and he restrained the rest of her body with cables, and he had then shoved a tube sock and tape into her mouth as a makeshift gag. Apparently, Chris had bound his wife inside of the office space inside of their home, and after that, he pressed his knee into her back and strangled her with a loose cord. And strangely, after he murdered his wife, he placed a Bible right next to her body and covered her body in a blanket. At some point after killing his wife, Chris then moved forward with the murder of his own son. After toxicology reports were finished after the murder, investigators found that Daniel had Xanax in his system. So it seems like Chris had sedated him before killing him. So on that day, Chris put his son to sleep and then strangled him to death in his own bed, and afterwards once again placed a Bible right next to his son's body. Now, investigators eventually found needle marks on Daniel's arms, and people have alleged in the years after the murders that Daniel was suffering from what's called Fragile X syndrome, which makes you naturally just a smaller child with a smaller frame. And according to some of Chris's friends and family, this syndrome had caused a lot of domestic issues within their marriage and had caused Chris to feel like his son was just too small. So after Chris had murdered his wife and son, that's when he placed those phone calls and those texts to his friends. He basically was saying his final goodbyes and setting everything in order. And Chris then went to a lat pull-down machine, a piece of exercise equipment, and created a noose out of a loose wire. He basically held up the weights and then wrapped this around his neck and released the weights, which ended up strangling him to death. So apparently during this time frame, Chris had been researching some religious things on his computer, including some texts about the prophet Elijah and the resurrection of a dead boy. I mean, there's still a lot of mystery and intrigue surrounding these crimes, like exactly why they happened and what the Bibles meant. But yeah, this is one of the most gruesome crimes to rock the WWE, and it's definitely one that will never be forgotten. Experts have stated, though, that they believe that the head trauma that Chris suffered while working as a wrestler and performing in these wrestling matches may have had something to do with all of this. And one researcher who actually examined Chris's brain after the murders and after he took his own life stated that his brain resembled that of an 85-year-old Alzheimer patient. Now, after everyone in the WWE learned that Chris Benoit and his family were dead, instead of having the live Raw wrestling match that they were going to premiere that night, they actually aired a 3-hour-long tribute to the life and work of Chris Benoit. This was a lot of people saying how amazing Chris was as a person, basically talking him up, and they didn't really know exactly what had happened at the time. But the next day, when they found out the details of how Chris and his family had died, the WWE quickly tried to distance themselves from the whole thing and stated that on the next broadcast, they wouldn't even be mentioning Chris's name other than the opening remarks where they addressed that maybe they shouldn't have aired this really fluffy memorial piece right away.
Last month, 3 suitcases were discovered in Florida with human remains inside, and now a man has been arrested for his wife's murder. On July 21st, police in Delray Beach, Florida found a suitcase in the intercoastal waterway after someone called 911 to report something strange they saw in the waterway. This discovery, police found 2 more suitcases nearby, and the next day found 2 additional bags. Inside the suitcases and bags were human remains of a woman only described at the time as, quote, a white or Hispanic middle-aged woman with brown hair, approximately 5'4". The investigation into these suitcases led police to surveillance footage that then led them to a suspect. Multiple witnesses told detectives about a vehicle and person who was seen in the area multiple times before the suitcases were found. A couple who lived near where the suitcases were discovered told detectives they saw a white male looking into the intracoastal waterway several days before July 21st, the day the suitcase was found. They said he appeared to be looking for something, presumably the suitcase, and they saw him 5 to 6 times over a 3-day period before the 21st. When confronted by the couple, the man said he was waiting for the big boat to come into the harbor. Another group of witnesses who were working on a roof at a property next to where the 3rd suitcase was found said that they saw the same man standing on the seawall looking at the suitcase before he got into his car and left. Video surveillance in the area captured a vehicle tag that led them to their suspect, Delray Beach resident William Lowe, and he had a wife that matched the name that came back from an airline scan code on one of the suitcases. Adil Barbosa Fontes matched the brief description of the remains found in the suitcase, and she shared the same address as Lowe. This led police to acquire a search warrant for the home of 78-year-old Lowe. In searching his home, police found blood spatter throughout the residence, including in the living room, dining room, and primary bathroom. There were also drag marks observed throughout the home, and cleaning supplies that contained blood splatter were found as well. While they were executing the search warrant, detectives said that Lowe attempted to re-enter through the back window, and when he was stopped, he just said he was trying to get his phone and the keys to his storage unit. A search of that storage unit uncovered a chainsaw that appeared to have blood and human hair on it. After all of this, Lowe was arrested on July 31st. During questioning, he reportedly said that his wife Adil had been in Brazil for about 3 weeks. But when questioned further about her trip, he did not know how she got to the airport, what airline she flew on, or the last time he spoke to her. When shown photos of the suitcases, Lowe reportedly said he had never seen them before. But police knew at least one of them belonged to his wife because of the airline tag that had her name connected to it. And when they asked Lowe about this, he just said, "I don't know." The day after Lowe's arrest, the victim found in the suitcases was positively identified through dental records as Adil Barbosa Fontes. ME declared the manner of death to be homicide and the cause of death to be a gunshot wound to the head. The next day, Lowe was charged with first-degree murder and abuse of a dead body. He was denied bail and he has not yet entered a plea, so he remains in prison until his next hearing. Hopefully, he will have to pay for what he did. Rest in peace, Adil.